and spend time in prison, he would have the luxury of seeing his family again, talking to them, and he would likely get to spend time with them upon his release. These are all luxuries that my young cousin Gianna was robbed of when Chauvin made the active decision to kill our father. There will be no more birthday parties, no graduations, holiday gatherings, or other family celebrations. The laughter, hugs, guidance, advice, sense of security, and those opportunities to simply say I love you are forever gone.
Even though I have not spoken publicly, I have always supported him 100% and always will. Derek has played over and over in his head the events of that day. I've seen the toll it has taken on him. I believe a lengthy sentence will not serve Derek well. When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me.
We're now just moments away from the actual sentencing of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd. We want to bring together a distinguished panel of experts to talk about today's proceedings. Civil rights attorney J. Wendell Gordon, trial attorney James France, and criminal defense attorney Daryl Exum. Mr. Gordon, I'll begin with you. The mother or the daughter, did either of them sway the judge? The daughter saying, I miss my father when he used to give me play dates. The mother saying, as you just heard, when you sentence him, you will be sentencing me. Is the sentence in this case already decided?
I think judges have a good idea of what the sentence is going to be before they even take the bench. Obviously, this testimony was certainly compelling, not only to the viewing audience, but to myself, even as a trial attorney. Whenever you hear from a 7-year-old child, you know that's rawness, that's everything. That's innocence, that's vulnerability, and she laid it all out. I was particularly nonplussed by the mother's testimony, whereby she made no reference to the Floyd family at all. She offered no compassion, no condolences, and she was just focused on herself and her son. And I think she just missed the mark, a great opportunity to try to bring things together. I don't think she did it well.
Mr. France, I'm going to give you the standard broadcast warning that should the courtroom resume, we will take it live, and I will politely have to cut you off. But as you were listening, how much pressure is on the judge? Our legal expert, Dr. Laura McNeil, says she thinks somewhere between 20 and 25. If it comes in less than 30, we've heard that number as the maximum, what the prosecutors want, will the judge be seen as giving favoritism to Derek Chauvin?
I do not think he will be seen that way. He's going to weigh both sides really well. I think that what the last commentator just mentioned was the mother did not show any compassion to the family, which was not, she definitely missed the mark. But the judge has already decided beyond a reasonable doubt that there was 4 aggravating factors which were significant. Killing him in front of children, setting a horrible example, joining with other officers to commit the act of killing him. Horrible example, the things that he did, and he did it with impunity. He didn't have any compassion for Mr. Floyd when Mr. Floyd couldn't breathe. Those are all factors that the judge said beyond a reasonable doubt. So my thought is I'd be surprised if he came in less than 30 years. But if he does, then he's weighed the factors. He listened to the mother and the family and decided, well, there is some truth to what she said. He was a good police officer at one point. He certainly wasn't then. He was a terrible police officer, a terrible example. So I think the judge will be fair. He seemed like he was fair during the trial from my view of it. And so let's just see what happens here.
Mr. Exum, as you have been hearing, the weight of the evidence against Derek Chauvin is massive, to say the very least. If this was your client, would you want him to roll the dice at this point in time and have given a statement to the court?
I think at this point, there's really nothing he can say. You know, in the pre-sentence report, he's allowed to make a statement, and it's a statement that basically the judge reads, and it's a confidential statement. And I believe in that report, he made a statement, and it was a very detailed statement, a statement he couldn't make on the record. So I wouldn't have him make a statement. I think the court heard the evidence, and I think the court is ready to rule. And, you know, my honest opinion, and Mr. French and Jay, I think they are absolutely dead on in their comments, but I think any sentence under 20 years would not be seen as a sentence that delivers a serious blow to the point that is being made by the public in this case.
Mr. Gordon, there is the sentence that will be rendered. There is also the place of confinement. This is going to be a state prison versus we hear so much about the federal system where somebody goes to a maximum, medium, or country club prison. Will Derek Chauvin get preferential treatment behind bars?
I expect that he will be treated different. And some people may consider it preferential treatment. I believe that he will be segregated from the general population. I don't think he really has any usefulness or can benefit at all from being in Gen Pop, as they call it. Nonetheless, I'm not really concerned about how he fares in prison. I know the media has been trying to change the narrative so that we may be concerned about what he's going to be going through. Quite frankly, prison is luxury for him based upon the conduct that we all witnessed on that 9-minute and 29-second video. So I'd be more concerned about how George Floyd is faring in heaven, whether or not he sees pearly gates, golden roads, or rivers of milk and honey. That's what I'd be for.
So, Mr. France, I'll let you weigh in on that. Should we be concerned about where he is sent to prison and how he is treated?
No. He killed Mr. Floyd. He did it with impunity. He wouldn't let him breathe. He killed him in front of children. I don't think that we should be that concerned about his time in prison and what he's going to experience, really. And I agree with the gentleman that just said 20 years or less than 20 years would not send a message. I think the judge needs to send a message for deterrence and for accountability here. And it should be at least 25 years, if not 30. That's my view.
Let's go back to our panel right now. And Mr. Gordon, I'll ask you, J. Wendell Gordon, 22 years, your thoughts on the sentence handed down by the judge? Mr. Gordon? Okay, we lost Mr. Gordon, so I will go to Daryl Exum. Mr. Exum, your thoughts on the sentence in this case, 22 and a half years.
You know, I thought 22 and a half was a little low. I really expected the judge to kind of go over 25, or at least 25. And 2.5 years may not seem like a big difference, but there's a psychological sort of impact of the number of 25 versus 22 and a half years. And I understood he had to do it in months because that's the way the guidelines work in Minnesota. But I really felt that, you know, this case, and the judge telling him that he's not trying to send a message. He didn't have to say that. In my opinion, he really didn't have to say that. Because, in fact, every sentence sends a message. Every sentence sends a message of deterrent. It sends a message of justice. So when the judge said that, it really sort of bothered me. And I understood why he said it, but he didn't really make it clear. I mean, the legal community, we all understood what he meant. But from a public perspective, he sort of did kind of slap the public in the face. To some extent, not with the number, 22 and a half is a significant number, but with his words.
Mr. France, I'm curious because I was thinking about this while I was listening to that number being handed out, which is we talked about the aggravating factors, but what were the mitigating factors? In other words, why didn't he get 40 years, which is actually what he could have gotten, versus the 22 and a half? I'm trying to figure out what was the mitigating factor that caused the judge to come in at 22 and a half years.
That's a good question. He was a good police officer before. He had no criminal record before. He had a family, and those are mitigating factors. But I think the display that he put on that day where he killed Mr. Floyd took all that away, really. I agree that I would have thought at least 25 years here or more with the misconduct that occurred. It's just, and of course, it should be a deterrent. It should be holding him accountable completely. It should tell others not to do that again, not to do anything like this ever. And I don't know if that is enough of a deterrent, really.
Mr. Exum, I'll ask the question this way because it came up during the interview that Dre Clark was doing before he was interrupted. The young man asked, what does justice look like? And he asked the question almost as if by saying, what does justice look like when there is so much injustice in the community? So is there any way possible that a fair sentence could have been rendered based on so many past sentences that have been handed down that so many people in Minneapolis and around this country will view as being unjust?
You know, I think I guess there's always going to be two ways to look at this case. From a legal perspective and from the public perspective. From the public, and there's one perspective that sort of comes together, and that is this. As a defense attorney, we all know the prosecution usually gets the sentence they ask for. We know that. We know that happens 90% of the time. And the public knows that. And when you hear a judge undercut the prosecution's sentence by 7.5 years, it does make you think there must have been significant mitigation. And we've all seen, at least based on what we've seen, that there wasn't significant mitigation. So it does kind of rub me the wrong way. But then again, I have not read the judge's opinion, so I don't know exactly what legal analysis he went through to get to where he got to. I mean, his legal analysis may be flawless. And then, you know, I would certainly feel a little different. But on a visceral gut level, the sentence doesn't satisfy me because I don't feel that the judge really took into consideration a lot of the things that are important in this case. This is the most socially significant case of my lifetime. And when the judge sort of says, I'm not trying to send a message, of course he is. He's sending a message to all police officers. He's sending a message to all law enforcement all over the country that you have to be accountable, that you will be treated harshly by the justice system that you are sworn to protect. And there are those who are going to believe 22.5 years just doesn't say that.
Mr. France, I'll ask the tough question. If George Floyd was white and Derek Chauvin was black, would he be looking at 22.5 years behind bars right now?
That's a very good question. And I was thinking about the same thing. So we'll never know that right here. But I think the judge weighed the mitigating factors. He weighed the other factors that should send him to prison for a long, long time. And he decided that it should be 22.5 years. And he was the one that ran that trial. He was there every day, every minute. So I would defer to him. But at the same time, it does send a message, whether he thinks it does or not. It sends a message to all other police officers around the United States that this can happen to them, that they're not going to get a hand slap on this at all. This is not a hand slap. So I think to that extent, it is a significant decision. It's not 30 years. It's not 40, the max, but it's 22.5, which is significant. It's almost twice the what it could have been. So,
Mr. Exum,
I don't know.
Your thoughts on the same question?